Hi, I'm Natasha McCrea, the Love CEO, and you're watching P3 on Rise Above TV.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Rise Above TV, where we are empowering humanity and supporting unity. You're watching P3, the place where we feature individuals who have tapped into their power, passion, and purpose. I'm your host, Janie Terrazas, and today I am super pumped and excited to have my dear friend, Natasha McCrea. She's known as the Love CEO, and back in the day, her and I used to host a radio show in Los Angeles, and it was so much fun, and so it feels a little bit like a reunion. So I'm totally excited about this time that we're going to get to spend together. I want to welcome Natasha. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hey, I'm super excited to be here. I've just been watching what you're doing, and I love every bit of it. So this is a beautiful space to be in today.
I appreciate you so much. And of course, you have dedicated so much of your life to pouring into others, into empowering others. I know women is like your thing, and helping them heal their hearts, because you yourself have lived a really tumultuous life, like early on in childhood, and as you were growing through, evolving and stuff. There's a lot of challenges and pitfalls and obstacles that you faced, but every single time you were like rising above and rising above. There was this resilience and this grit that I would imagine comes from like ancestors and maybe some people in your family. But I'm looking forward to giving you a chance to tell people a little bit about how you got to the place where you are at, because, it's been through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. So girl, you are in your power, passion, purpose. I love it.
It really has. I mean, when I think about growing up and not even knowing my value and getting into bad relationship after bad relationship, being married and divorced by the age of 30, it was divorced twice by the age of 30. It was something that could break you. I was a single mom for years. I was a teen mother. I dropped out of college. There were all of those things that could have been things that just stopped you dead in your tracks. And I knew that, yes, honey, it was part of the ancestors coming for me. They were not going to they were not going to release me at all. But I also knew that I had to take control of my life, and I didn't know where to start. But eventually getting into the arts and therapy was huge. And so I truly believe that, with like the power that I was able to conjure up from ancestors, from other people that believed in me, that was huge. And I think that might be why I do what I do, because I tell people, I'm like, look, I'm going to have a lot of belief. I might hold the belief for you that you might not have for yourself. So other people believing in me, the power of, I'm glad you said that, ancestors. I love the way that sounds, and really just making the decision, looking for the opportunities, looking for solutions. I mean, how many times do we go through things and we're just like, oh my God, I don't know what's happening. And especially now, we can Google that. So
yes, exactly. Yeah, you get swept up in the chaos, and it's like we don't realize there's ways in which we can enter the eye of the hurricane, the eye of the tornado, and that it's in that space where you do find, I call it the solution, SOULution,
I like that.
But a lot of us were not taught how to find that space, or even to know that that space even existed, where there is a direct connection and relationship with our creator, and I don't know what that looks like for you, or if that's even a big part of like your story and your work.
Yeah. Oh, it totally is. I mean, that's your spiritual relationship that you have with yourself, with God, with the universe is invaluable. I mean, even I do a free self-care workshop for people because I feel like that's a foundation. And within it, we're not talking about just physical aspects of things. It's very much a spiritual practice as well. So that played a huge role. I think if I did not have a spiritual practice, it would have just been a very dark space that I probably would have stayed in longer. And I'm not saying just because you have these practices, you don't go through things or you don't feel things. It's like you'll feel those things and you'll go through things, but there is an ingrained hope that rests in your soul that is going to help you, push through. So that's really big. That's a really big deal for me, and that is a place where you garnish that power.
Where,
Yeah, it's really important. I agree with you 100% there.
I
Totally.
where did that, how did you come to understand that? Like what was that? I know that could be a long story in itself, but just that beginning stage of when you realize and recognize where your worth was actually coming from, and then starting to do the mind body healing to catch up with what your soul knew.
Yeah, it was after my second divorce. So I was, being raised in the church, you have that spiritual foundation, but a lot of times you're doing it for other people. It's the pastors or it's your mama's church or your pastor's church, not the church that you have within yourself and the personal relationship. So for years, I believe that's what it was. And then after my second divorce, I began to really seek out the things that made me whole and seek out the things that made me tick and seek out how can I have that personal relationship. So after the second divorce, I found this therapist, and she did like group coaching, and a friend was like, you got to meet her. I can't even explain what she does, but you got to meet her. And so I went and I dove into the lessons that she taught. I drove an hour, like every week I would drive an hour in LA traffic to go to this lady's place. And it really shifted things for me because I was able to find that I am the most important piece to the puzzle. And when I found that out, the relationship that I had with my spiritual relationship began to get stronger because it became more of a personal spiritual relationship, not just something that it had inherited, you know?
Absolutely. It was
So, yeah.
a decision, a decision that you made. And interestingly enough, when you start to honor it in that way and you make that decision, your faith naturally starts to grow. It
Yeah.
strengthens. And like you
Mm-hmm.
said, you already had that hope, that foundation was there to kind of have that hope. But I feel
Yeah.
like there's that hope, and then it's like faith, and it's a fine line between the two. But hope sometimes still has that connotation for people where it's like a wish, it's like I hope.
Mm-hmm.
And faith is like, you know what I mean?
And you're moving,
Yeah, you're
and you're
moving.
moving.
Mm,
That's what I always tell people. I believe in the behavioral aspect of things. Like
yeah.
even when I'm coaching people, I'm like, what can we do to make a physical change? How can we have a behavioral shift? How can you if I'm talking or teaching anywhere, I'm like, okay, these are the steps you want to do when we're done. I feel like things happen when you do take action. So when you do turn that hope into faith, because the hope is what's going to ignite that, but the faith is what you're fueling and moving, and it all works in this cycle. How can I be inspired to take action is to hold on to your hope, and inspired to take action and hold on to your hope. It's like this circular thing, which is beautiful. I mean, it's
Yeah.
beautiful, and it can be a challenge at times, but I believe it's our own personal responsibility to fight like hell for ourselves.
Mm.
It's
Oh,
your
that's
personal
like that quote.
responsibility.
That's going to be the quote in the post. Rewind, repeat. Por favor.
It is your responsibility to fight like hell for yourself. It
Yes,
is. It
it is
truly
that.
is.
And this is the time of accountability and responsibility. It's how we're going to bring back civility into, that civil into civilization,
Yeah.
and we can't have authenticity without vulnerability and humility, and people struggle.
Woo!
I know, girl, that was
Preach on it, Janie.
I know the wordplay just gets so good.
Authenticity without vulnerability.
And
Come on.
yeah, you can't I heard, right, in meditation, you can't have authenticity without vulnerability and humility. And if you really think about it, those two words have really been misconstrued and misunderstood and actually tarnished in a lot of ways. And I think now, with where we are in the world and the direction in which we're heading, it's important for us to get a better understanding of the meaning and how it actually improves our well-being, and it improves our lives, because without those things, it's hard to change. Why do you feel, or maybe not, I don't want to be presumptuous, because I was going to say, why do you feel you always embrace change? Because even though sometimes
you know me, girl. You know me.
I know there's change that's like we create, right? Or something happens and then we're forced into it, right? So it's like choice change, and then like disruptive, something happens and you're forced to, I don't know, you lose a job, or like in my case,
Yeah.
my husband's like, oh, after 10 years, I'm going to leave you. And it's like, oh, that's wonderful. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
how do you deal with the earthquakes and the volcanoes of life, and be able to see it and see it from a higher perspective and find the silver lining in it? Like, how were you able to do that?
Yeah, it's really doing the work. It's really having the space where you're doing the work, like what you were saying, the meditation, the understanding yourself, and and the words you said, embracing change. Because when I was younger, I didn't embrace those moments. It was things happened and you're just kicking and screaming like, and that's the immaturity. I think that's emotional immaturity. And I'm not to step on anyone's toes, but that's what it was.
Yeah. And we
And
all go through that. Like, hello.
yeah,
Yeah.
we all do. We all really do go through that. But as you get older, I start thinking, how can I make my life feel good more often? That is my objective. How can life feel good more often, even in the midst of chaos? How can I find those glimmers of hope so that my life can feel good? Because I'm not going to keep giving it away. So sometimes I don't even know, it flows between the full embracing the change versus just acknowledging that change is going to happen.
Mm.
It's going to happen. Things happen. Life happens. And how do you make the most of that moment? Because I don't plan on going nowhere. So if I'm going to be in this moment and living on this earth and blowing through life, how am I going to make this feel good for myself? And that might be straight ego and selfish reasons, but I'm like, how can this feel good for me? But I'm definitely the person who looks at change from a different perspective. And I think that comes with always being shook. When I was young, I found out I had twin brothers who were younger than me, were not my mother's children, and my parents were still married. Like that moment I can mark, because I wrote a one-woman show about it, girl. I had to get over it.
Yes, she is an amazing actress, director, comedian. Like, she did a one-woman show, y'all. Literally, like, Broadway material. Anyway, go ahead.
Man, I'm just saying, like, that shook me. So at a younger age, I realized, oh man, life sometimes isn't gonna be what you think it is. Exactly. We have that moment. We have this idea of how things were. My dad was just, at that young age, you have that moment. But then it shows up and it isn't. Now you can be jaded and you can start going through life thinking, oh, nothing's going to happen good for me. I just don't think you're going to enjoy the moment. I would rather have the hope, look at things from a higher vibrating perspective, enjoy those moments in between the chaos.
Thank you.
I don't want to be just chaotic my whole life and I'm not going to enjoy moments, because life can throw you some, curveballs. I'm like, life's going to throw me curveballs. I'm going to enjoy this, man. Like, I'm going to enjoy it.
Exactly. It was so funny. You reminded me, right after that whole split happened, we were also in business together. So there was a lot of changes that needed to take place. And the first thing that came to mind to put on my website to change was when life gives you lemons, or life gave me lemons, and I didn't say just lemonade. I said lemon meringue pie. I'm going to make some freaking lemon tarts. Like, you know what I mean? Like, how do I turn this pain into purpose? But purpose not just for like myself, but like for others, Like, I want to feed lemon desserts to a lot of people with the lemons that life served me. How can I do that?
Girl, that gave me goosebumps. You're giving me goosebumps right now.
I love it. Well,
you got a lemon smorgasbord.
Lemon smorgasbord. But listen, I also want to say, not everybody, when we're served lemons, it's okay to just make lemonade.
You made a really good point, is, that just happens to be our journey and our path. And because you're going through something, if someone's going through something and they don't feel like they don't even feel like pulling out the sugar to make the lemonade, it's okay. It's okay.
Yes.
Love on you. And that's a part of self-care at a certain point. It's just when it starts to go downhill, when you start to fall into a depression, when you start to become hopeless,
Yes.
You have to use every fiber in your being to reach out for something. And it may not be you're making lemon meringue and lemonade for everybody. It might be that you're looking to the person who makes those lemons and lemonade, and you like, girl, can you just break me off a piece of that lemon cookie? Like, you have to be okay with that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, exactly. And I do want to say, although that was my mentality in that moment, and that was like what I put out there, I had already been doing a lot of spiritual work. That was one of the reasons why our relationship came to an end, because as you start to transform and you start to elevate and expand your consciousness and desire more for yourself, and you start to get healthy and you heal and you're balanced and you know your worth. So your no, I don't want to say, it's funny. I was going to say expectations. There's healthy boundaries that we need to understand for ourselves, understand what it means to feel safe, in friendship, in relationship, in any kind of relationship, really. And so when one starts to get dialed into that, if the other person is not ready to make all those serious internal changes,
Yes.
then things will end up coming to an end. So when you honor your power, passion, and purpose,
Yeah.
be ready sometimes for things to dissolve, and that can be
Yeah.
uncomfortable too. But going back to change and learning how to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. And like you said, when I was in the midst of that pain, I was still, and I was like, it was hard. There was rage and depression, like literally the 5 stages of death. Anytime we go through major change, sometimes we go through those stages. But while I was doing that, I was still volunteering, or I was going to nature, and I was exercising. I was just finding ways. I was playing music, and even when I was like, it was like, I'm playing the blues on my harmonica. It's like,
you were fighting like hell for yourself.
Thank you, sister.
That's what you were doing.
Oh my God.
That is what you were doing. And your purpose drove you. That's the thing. When you think about purpose, your purpose will give you fuel no matter what. And that makes me think about the question you just asked earlier, is when you have that purpose, you tend to accept change a little quicker because you have that, where you're going. Your purpose is that destination that you put in the GPS. I mean, we know we're all on the journey, so you don't ever really fully get to the destination, but it's the thing that's fueling you. So when you have, challenges, or when you're depressed, or when you aren't sure what's going on in your world, if you are solid on knowing what your overall life's purpose is, then it can help you continue to move. And oftentimes our purpose, actually all the time, our purpose can show up in different ways through different avenues. And that's when you fully elevate to that level of knowing your purpose, then you will not be shook by, transitioning in business, transitioning in relationships. And I shouldn't say you won't be shook, because you'll be shook, but you won't stay there.
Yes.
It won't lay you flat on your back for good. It's just, you'll be shook, but your purpose is what's going to allow you to get back up and move when you have that bigger picture. And I think that's where, that comes in.
And I loved earlier, you were talking about maturity. So when we love self in this way and have this type of self-care practice and start learning how to have healthier inner dialogue, or what to do when we're facing fear, and all of these things, and we start to learn it, and then you start to do it pretty consistently. Like you said, you still feel shook, but you already have all this points of reference, and you built a toolbox. You already know what works for you for these different things, and then you just get really good at using them all the time. Like you said, we cannot control all the circumstances, like COVID. You know what I mean? COVID was one of the things that sort of, just struck us all and changed a lot of things very abruptly and quickly. But a lot of times, just like the silver lining, we somewhat needed that to have another kind of resuscitation, and now everybody's more curious about their immunity, which they hadn't started to become, but now it's like a big thing.
For real.
It goes back to accountability and responsibility. So knowing how to create joy in your life, knowing how to handle these moments, this is all stuff you've been doing for quite some time now.
Yeah. So one of the things that really makes me I guess what makes me think about navigating through what your purpose is and taking care of myself and, having all of the things in alignment that I can make sure I'm not depleted, because that's the only way. Like, some people might not know their purpose. You might be hearing this and thinking like, well, what is my purpose? And that's going to come from really spending time with yourself and really getting to know yourself and what brings you joy and what brings you pleasure and the things that you like. And when you discover that and you become passionate about life, that's going to really lead you to operating in your purpose. So when change does happen, because it will, when change does happen, it's not going to floor you. It's not going to stop you.
Yes, I love that you keep saying that too. It's that there's a quote, I don't know exactly how he says it, but Rocky talks about it's not how many times you get hit and knocked down, it's like how you get up, or it's about getting up, and imagine if all the people on the planet had that level of self-esteem and self-worth and self-confidence and self-knowing, and that's why introspection and going on this journey of self-discovery is one of the most beautiful, most powerful, profound gifts that you can give yourself. Know how your physiology and psychology work. Know how your mind and body work. Understand what lights up your spirit. What is a spirit? What is a soul? What is that? What is light? Why do you gotta let
that's good.
your body? You know what I mean? Like, get curious. Shit, we're literally connected with all things.
All things.
All things, and we're all impacting one another. And you've made such a huge impact in your community, and it's beautiful because you got an international reach with the beauty of the internet and technology. Although it has its downfalls and its pitfalls, it also has the power to unite those that are also doing beautiful things in the world. You also attracted a beautiful relationship. So I know that we were talking about you being the love CEO, and it would make sense that you have this awesome relationship that I know you guys feed and nurture daily. Is there a quick little tip that you would like to give for people that are in relationship and or maybe also one for those that are, in the process of being open to love?
The thing, it's so interesting because whenever I think about, the advice about relationships, it always goes back to self for me. It always goes back to self.
Okay, well, that's okay. I'm right there with you, girl, because that's where it starts.
Yeah.
So
and if two people, go ahead. You have a question?
No, go ahead.
If two people are on that same journey of really diving in to hit, their self-realization for themselves, that magnifies the passion in a relationship. That magnifies the relationship hands down. And when you are not equal in that area, it can be a challenge. And the individual who's slipping has to fight like hell to keep up. But that's really important. Even when you're single, if you're leaning into yourself, then you're going to attract a different type of person. You're not going to look for someone to save you. Because oftentimes that's what happens. It's like, I need someone to come rescue me. But when you and God are taking care of your basic needs, you allow the person who is supposed to be in your world to show up.
Yes.
Other than that, you're going to accept the unacceptable because you need someone to swoop in and save you. Yep. And we don't want that. Yeah. So I would say knowing yourself, self-realization, understanding, making yourself your new boo. Because if you are not, because when you get a new boo, you always on the phone with your new boo, you finding out what your new boo likes, you're giving them gifts, you're spending time with them, you're saying nice things to them.
Yes.
So that's what it is important you do for yourself, specifically like when you're single, because when that branches into the marriage, you want to be able to still have that, Absolutely. And oftentimes people are like, I lost myself. It happens.
Yeah. And I really love that you said, becoming your own boo. I look at this process as becoming your own beloved. We got conditioned on how to be our best adversary and our best enemy, and the self-critic and the self-saboteur and the judger and the complainer and all that stuff got all kinds of flexing and practice and teaching. And so we have to learn how to then build up the friend within us. And we have the two voices, and so the one, it's like that Native American proverb or saying where it's like the dark wolf, the dark wolf,
Yep, the two wolves.
which one you feed more is going to be the one that ends up, being the master of this mind body. So
yes,
you want to be in control of it so that you can create and design and attract things that you truly want, that make you feel good.
yeah.
But you have to feel like you're deserving of that, and
you really do. You really do. And it doesn't mean that people can't grow together, but that's the importance. You must be able to grow together. And so that's, just because you are looking to have self-realization or be enlightened or grow and have massive growth doesn't mean that you're going to kick your honey to the curb. It just means that honey has to catch up.
That's exactly true.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you in that whole matchup. When you're mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically on the same page, the same wavelength, it creates a really powerful synergy. And I'm grateful to be in a partnership now with an individual who is also dialed into his P3 and works daily to be that. And it's alchemy. We're doing alchemy on ourselves, but then there's what's called alchemical love. And I call it a real relationship, REAL, because that authenticity is missing.
Girl, preach.
It ain't real unless you're being honest with yourself and each other.
Yes. Bring it. That's a whole series, coach. And when you launching the course on that?
I know, right? I have it in the works. But if you both care and you both want to
care, if you both are fighting like hell, and that's so important.
It's so important.
I'm so glad you found that in your partner. That is beautiful.
I know. I'm super grateful. And I love when I see other couples enjoying one another in that, holy, sacred way. I know that there's many passions of yours, and I think that you dabble in them, and you're just overall a passionate person.
Yes,
but is there anything that you want to share about passion? And then I don't recall if we touched on your self-care practices. We might have already kind of touched on them a little bit.
Okay, well, we'll talk on that. So yeah, passion to me is it's so important. I kind of cringe when I watch people who aren't living passionately. It looks different for everyone. And I don't know if that's because I spent years, how you say you recognize something in people and you have to look in the mirror. And I think it could be because I spent years being shut off, early on in life. I was passionate, then things happen, and then you just become this robot and go through life kind of on this even playing field. So you don't really experience anything, the highs or the lows.
Yeah.
So I did that for a few years, and that didn't feel good. And so I feel in my world, going back to life feeling good for me, and not saying life being easy, but life feeling good for me, doing things with passion is huge for me. Meaning I put my heart and soul and mind into the things that I do, being open and available if I am passionate about something, to leaning into it and doing it. Because oftentimes we get a little spark and then we just stuff it down. And it's no, if you have that spark and, God's speaking to you in poetry, or you're going through so much and you're having this idea, you have to lean into that. You have to lean into that. And that goes back to when you can lean into those things that you're passionate about. I think that was what will lead you to your purpose. I truly believe that. Because if we all lived a life where we were doing the things that we truly enjoyed, can you imagine? People wouldn't be cussing people out on the road because people hate going to work and hate doing the things they're doing, and you do that for your most waking hours of your life. Come on.
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. So if more people did the things that they were passionate about, the world would be a happier place. We would create ripple effects in our lives, in our relationships, in our communities, in the world. We would create massive change. And I guarantee if there's someone who is questioning their purpose, I guarantee if they lean into those things that bring them joy and lean into those things that they're very passionate about, then they will definitely find their purpose.
Absolutely.
Hands down. hands down.
Totally agree. And it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do P3, because that's how I looked at it. I was like, if most of the population was dialed into their P3, the only way you could be dialed into it is if you did a lot of the work that we've been talking about, you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah.
And once you're in your P3, you're at peace. And
Yeah.
and when you're at peace, you're dialed into abundance of
Mm-hmm.
all things. You know what I mean? And so that in itself is like, it's all tied together, people. If you want peace, if you
It
want wellness,
really is.
and it's tied to our creativity and our vitality. And I really love that you said that, it's like finding passion and finding what makes your heart light up. And what, just go back and just kind of get a pen and paper and start thinking, when you were a kid, what were the things you really were into? Doesn't necessarily you have to be into them now, but sometimes you can just start there, because sometimes people get like
Yeah.
a blockage,
I
and
agree. It's so important to start there. It is
yeah,
so important to go back to the time that you did know. Like some people go, I don't know. There was a time you knew something. So if you go back to the time you knew,
yes,
whether it was eating that ice cream when you were 5 years old, and just go back there, because then you're going to see the breadcrumbs on the roadmap. And that, when we were talking earlier about self-care is what brings you that self-awareness so that you can dive into your passion. Because for a long time, I did not have a self-care plan. I worked myself to the bone. I was always grinding, never making it to where I wanted, but grinding, not thriving, never
yeah,
making it to where I wanted to be. And it was so tiring. I was exhausted all the time. And so I began to really unpack what self-care is.
yeah,
And a lot of because I create self-care blueprints for individuals. Like I coach people into how they create their own self-care blueprint. And it's so important. A huge portion of that is what brings you pleasure. A huge portion of that is uncovering, well, okay, what am I getting pleasure about? And that word we don't use, or it's a word that people have associated with not good, but no, we have to know what is pleasurable about the things that I'm doing, the food that I'm eating, how am I navigating this world? And so for me, I make it a point to make sure I am experiencing pleasure on a daily. Whether that is through my food, whether that is through yoga, through massage, through a bath, how I feel the water on my body, or self-pleasuring. I don't know if this is G, you can cut that out if you need to, but it's something that I make a point to experience, because we have to create our own internal rejuvenation in order for us to move forward. And it's great to get fueled from the outside, but it's so important to be fueled from the inside. And when you're not taking care of yourself, you are giving from an empty cup. And we should always be giving from the overflow that's gone into the saucer, because your cup is so dang full. And that's what self-care does for you. But 9 times out of 10, when I'm talking to individuals about self-care, a lot of the self-care is also major self-discovery for them. A lot of people aren't sure. They're not sure what I want. I don't even know what I like. And so then we got to poke the box. You have to start back to the behavioral and action thing we talked about earlier.
yeah,
You move somewhere. You go to that, that online concert. I'm like, go to that concert, but you go to try things, and I didn't like that. So you don't like that. Or try what you said, going back to what you remember you liked. And oftentimes that is before society and school shut us down. So it's when you're younger, you remembered when you were flowing and free and enjoying and carefree and had pleasure in life in general. So it's really important that everyone have not just a self-care plan for discovery, but a self-care plan as maintenance, where it's just like brushing your teeth or combing your hair. That's so important. And that's what definitely keeps me connected. That keeps me connected to myself. Some of the things that I do personally is I have breath work that I do, yoga, I have morning rituals with myself. So those are a lot of the things that I've implemented for myself.
I really appreciate that you said pleasure. You and I are on the same page in just so many different ways, but there's these 4 pillars of life that I live my life by. And one of them is pleasure. Pleasure is a lost art form. And
Yes, it is.
and if we can start tying pleasure without guilt so that we can understand how it ties into self-care and our well-being, then maybe, we could eradicate the guilt that people feel around it. It's like you said, brushing your teeth, you just 2 minutes of breathing every day and some affirmations and getting a little nature time for a couple of minutes. So you balance out green time with screen time. It's like all these tiny little things, but if you start to do them daily, they do start to make a difference. And then naturally,
Yeah.
you want to start doing more of those healthy things, which is really great.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really important, I think. And that will definitely keep the fuel, in your life. And
Yeah.
it'll keep you moving. It'll keep you moving.
You've given us so many beautiful words of wisdom today. Let people know how they can find you. If there's any last words that you'd like to share with us or any place that you would like to direct them, I'm sure they would love to connect with you.
Yes, I love to connect with individuals, and I'm looking to have deeper connections. So I love giving out my number. People can reach me at 310-421-0775. And if you're interested in checklists that I have, a lot of information, you can type freebie. I love giving away free stuff. Just text freebie and I'll make sure that you have the links to the latest that's going on. And I'm accessible, Natasha McCrea, on everything. So that's MCCREA.
Awesome. I love it. I really appreciate all that you have done, like I said before, to help others. And I think it's beautiful that you also offer so many materials, offer those freebies so that they can at least get a jump start in creating a healthier, more optimal lifestyle. And thank you again so much, Natasha, for being with us. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I had such a great time.
And thank you everyone for tuning in to Rise Above TV, where we are empowering humanity and supporting unity. Your likes, shares, and follows are greatly appreciated because they help spread the love. Subscribe to our YouTube and podcast channel. Be sure to tune in next week for another power-packed episode of P3, Power, Passion, and Purpose. Till next time, peace be in us.